Welcome to Mr. Phantom, where fear hides in every shadow and chilling tales come to life. Before we start, make sure to subscribe and like this video to get a scary story every night. Good evening. Sit back, take a deep breath, and let your body relax. Tonight, we're about to step into a story. A secret buried deep within the backyard of a neighbor who seems ordinary at first glance. Imagine a quiet little town where the nights are peaceful, filled only with the whisper of the wind rustling through the trees. Nothing appears out of place. Nothing seems unusual. But beyond that fence, something is buried. Something that was never meant to be seen, never meant to be found. This isn't just a story about a mysterious neighbor. This is a tale of whispers calling from beneath the earth, of something waiting to emerge. Close your eyes, listen carefully, and let the darkness of the night pull you deeper into the story. This is The Neighbor Who Likes to Bury Things. I never really paid much attention to my neighbors. Growing up in a big city, I was used to keeping to myself. But when I moved to Davenport, Iowa, things felt different. The town had a quietness that made every small sound feel amplified. The creaking of old houses, the rustling of leaves in the wind, the distant hoot of an owl at night. It all felt eerie in a way I couldn't explain. I had rented a small apartment in an older part of town, right on the edge of a residential neighborhood. It wasn't the kind of place you'd find in tourist brochures. The houses here were old but sturdy, with peeling paint and rusting mailboxes. It had a certain charm, but also an unsettling emptiness, as if the streets had too many shadows and too few people. From my bedroom window, I had a clear view of the house next door. It was a two-story Victorian-style home, with dark green paint that had started to chip away. The windows were always shut, the curtains drawn tight. A single porch light flickered weakly at night, casting long, trembling shadows across the unkempt lawn. But what caught my attention the most wasn't the house. It was the man who lived there. His name, as I later learned, was Mr. Grayson. He was an older man, maybe in his late 60s, with a thin frame and a hunched posture that made him look smaller than he actually was. He always wore the same thing, a long, dark overcoat, even in the middle of summer, and a fedora hat that he pulled low over his eyes. I had never seen him without it. At first, I thought he was just another quiet old man. He rarely left his house during the day, and when he did, it was only for short trips, to get groceries, pick up his mail, or stand on his porch smoking a cigarette. But at night, things were different. It started a few days after I moved in. I had trouble sleeping in a new place, so I would often stare out my window, letting my mind wander. That's when I saw him. Mr. Grayson was outside, digging in his backyard. At first, I thought he might be gardening. But even in the dim moonlight, I could tell that he wasn't planting anything. He was burying something. He would dig a deep hole, lower a large black bag into it, and then carefully cover it up, patting the dirt down with practiced precision. I told myself it wasn't my business. People buried all sorts of things: trash, old clothes, even pets. Maybe he had a dog that had passed away. But the way he did it, the way he constantly looked over his shoulder, the way his movements were so deliberate, it didn't sit right with me. The next night, I saw him again. This time, he had two bags. He moved in the same methodical way, digging in a different part of the yard, placing the bags inside, and covering them as if he had done this 100 times before. And then he did something that sent a chill down my spine. He looked up. Not in a casual way. It was sharp, sudden, as if he had sensed something watching him. His eyes scanned the darkness, and for a terrifying moment, I was sure he had seen me. My heart pounded so hard I thought he might hear it through the walls. But after a few seconds, he simply adjusted his hat and went back to work. The whole thing made my skin crawl. I wanted to forget about it, to chalk it up to an old man's strange habits. But it kept happening. Every night, without fail, he would be out there, digging and burying. Some nights, the bags were small. Other nights, they were bigger. One evening, I finally got the courage to ask my landlord about him. "Oh, Mr. Grayson?" he said, raising an eyebrow. "He's been there for years. Hardly speaks to anyone. A bit odd, but harmless, I guess." I hesitated. "Has he ever done anything strange?" The landlord shrugged. "Not that I know of. People in this neighborhood mind their own business." That was the problem. No one was paying attention to him. A few days later, I ran into an older woman who lived down the street. She was walking her dog, a tiny white terrier that barked at everything. I figured she had been in the neighborhood long enough to know something. "Excuse me," I said as I caught up to her. "Do you know Mr. Grayson?" The moment I mentioned his name, her expression darkened. She pulled her dog's leash a little tighter. "You stay away from him," she said in a low voice. "That man, something's not right about him." I felt a chill creep up my spine. "What do you mean?" She glanced around, as if making sure no one else was listening. "People around here have disappeared over the years. Not a lot, just one or two. But always people who live close to him." I swallowed hard. "Like who?" She hesitated, then sighed. "The last person who lived in your apartment. Ethan. Nice young man, about your age. He was friendly, always said hi. Then one day, he just vanished. No warning, no goodbye. His car was still in the driveway, his stuff was still in his place, but he was gone." A cold sweat formed on the back of my neck. "Did anyone look into it?" She scoffed. "Of course. Police came, asked questions. They even talked to Mr. Grayson. But there was no evidence, no signs of anything. So they dropped it." I felt a lump in my throat. "And you think?" "I don't know what to think," she said, gripping the leash even tighter. "But that man, he's not normal." That night, I couldn't stop thinking about what she had said. I lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing. If Ethan had disappeared, what if those bags Mr. Grayson had been burying weren't just garbage? My stomach twisted at the thought. I knew I should leave it alone. I should forget about it and move on with my life. But deep down, I knew I wouldn't. I had to find out what Mr. Grayson was hiding. I told myself I wouldn't look outside that night. The old woman's words lingered in my mind, repeating like a broken record. People have disappeared. He's not normal. I tried to push the thoughts away, convincing myself that I was overreacting, letting my imagination run wild. But no matter how much I tried to focus on something else, my eyes kept drifting toward the window. And sure enough, Mr. Grayson was out there again. The scene was almost identical to the previous nights. He moved like clockwork, shoveling dirt with eerie precision, lowering a black bag into the ground, then smoothing the soil back over as if nothing had ever been disturbed. But tonight, something was different. The bag was bigger. I felt a sickening churn in my stomach. My hands clenched into fists at my sides as I watched him. My mind screamed at me to stop, to look away, to pretend I had never seen anything in the first place. But I couldn't. And then he paused. I froze. From my window, I could see his whole body stiffen. He wasn't looking around like before. This was different. He stood completely still, his head tilted slightly downward, as if he was listening. The air in my room felt heavy. I strained my ears, trying to figure out what had made him stop. But all I could hear was the rustling of leaves and the distant hum of traffic from the main road. Then, out of nowhere, he dropped his shovel. I nearly jumped. My breath caught in my throat as the metal clattered against the dirt. Mr. Grayson stepped closer to the hole he had just dug, his posture rigid, his face obscured by the shadows of his hat. And then I heard it. A sound. A low, muffled noise, almost like whispering. I stiffened. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up as a cold chill slithered down my spine. At first, I thought I was imagining it. Maybe it was just the wind whistling through the trees. But no, the sound was coming from the hole. The whispering grew louder. I couldn't make out the words, but I could hear the urgency in them. It was like a dozen voices speaking at once, hushed and frantic, overlapping one another. Mr. Grayson suddenly took a step back, shaking his head. He looked scared, and that terrified me more than anything. I had never seen him react like this before. Every other night, he had been so methodical, so unemotional. But now, he was visibly shaken. The whispering continued, rising just enough for me to make out a few words. "Help us." My breath hitched. My legs felt like they were cemented to the floor. What the hell was I hearing? Mr. Grayson spun on his heels and ran inside. He didn't even bother picking up his shovel. He just bolted, slamming his back door behind him. I had a choice. I could pretend I hadn't heard anything. I could lock my windows, shut my blinds, and force myself to forget about it. That would be the smart thing to do. But something deep inside me, some reckless, morbid curiosity, told me otherwise. I needed to see what was in that hole. I didn't go outside immediately. I waited. I knew it was risky, but I wanted to be sure Mr. Grayson wasn't coming back out. I turned off my bedroom light and sat in the darkness, watching his house, listening. Minutes passed, then an hour. The porch light flickered, but the house itself remained eerily quiet. The curtains were still drawn. There was no movement inside. I took a deep breath and grabbed my phone, switching on the flashlight. My heart pounded against my ribs as I crept toward the back door of my apartment. The air outside was crisp and still. The moon was only half full, casting just enough light to make the shadows stretch unnaturally long across the ground. Every step I took felt deafeningly loud. I reached the fence that separated my yard from Mr. Grayson's. It was old and rickety, barely waist-high. Climbing over it was easier than I expected. My shoes sank slightly into the loose soil as I landed on the other side. I took another cautious step forward, and then another. The whispering had stopped. The night was dead silent. I aimed my flashlight at the hole. The dirt was still fresh, uneven, like he had been in a hurry to cover whatever was inside. My hands trembled as I grabbed the discarded shovel and drove it into the soft earth. The moment the metal touched the ground, the whispering started again. This time it was louder, more desperate. "Help us! Help us! Help us!" I nearly dropped the shovel. My heart was hammering so hard I thought it might burst. But I forced myself to keep digging. I didn't know what I was expecting to find. A bag, a box, some kind of disturbing secret that would confirm my worst fears about Mr. Grayson. What I didn't expect was movement. The dirt shifted. My breath caught in my throat. My entire body went rigid. Something underneath the soil was moving. My instincts screamed at me to run, to drop the shovel, jump the fence, and pretend I had never set foot in that yard. But my legs wouldn't move. I watched, frozen in horror, as the ground trembled slightly. And then, slowly, agonizingly, a pale hand pushed its way up from the dirt. I choked on a gasp. My flashlight flickered, casting a stuttering glow over the scene in front of me. The hand twitched. The fingers curled slightly, struggling against the weight of the soil. A soft, raspy breath filled the air. and then a voice. "Please." I stumbled backward, nearly tripping over my own feet. The voice was faint, weak, but undeniably real. Someone was buried alive. Panic surged through me. My mind raced a mile a minute, trying to process what was happening. Was this what Mr. Grayson had been hiding? Had he been burying people this whole time? I reached for my phone, my fingers shaking as I fumbled to dial 911. But before I could press the call button, a shadow loomed over me. The last thing I saw was the glint of something metal swinging toward my head. Then darkness. I woke up to the feeling of something cold and rough pressing against my cheek. My head throbbed, a sharp pain pulsing at the back of my skull. For a few moments, I couldn't remember where I was or what had happened. Everything was blurry, like I was trapped in a fog. Then it hit me. The hole, the whispering, the hand pushing up from the dirt. My body jolted as I snapped fully awake. I tried to move, but something was wrong. My arms wouldn't budge. My legs felt heavy, pinned down. The realization clawed at my mind like icy fingers. I was lying in a shallow grave. The breath caught in my throat. The smell of damp soil filled my nostrils. My hands were tied behind my back, my ankles bound together with something rough, rope, maybe. Panic exploded inside me as I twisted and jerked, trying to free myself. The dirt beneath me was loose, shifting slightly as I struggled, but I wasn't buried, not yet. I tilted my head, blinking through the darkness. The only source of light came from a dim lantern sitting a few feet away, casting eerie shadows across the uneven ground. I could hear the distant hum of crickets, the soft rustling of leaves in the wind. The night was still, too still. And then I heard footsteps. Slow, deliberate footsteps, crunching against the dirt. A shadow moved just beyond the lantern's glow, stretching long and thin across the ground. My stomach twisted into knots. A second later, Mr. Grayson stepped into the light. His face was expressionless, his sunken eyes hidden beneath the brim of his hat. He was holding a shovel, the same one I had used to dig up the hole. He tapped it lightly against his palm, his fingers curling around the worn wooden handle. "Didn't your parents ever teach you to mind your own business, Nolan?" His voice was calm, almost conversational, but there was something in his tone that made my blood run cold. I swallowed hard, my mind scrambling for something, anything to say. What are you doing?" I croaked, my throat dry. Why you buried someone alive?" "I saw them. They were still moving." Mr. Grayson sighed, shaking his head like he was dealing with a troublesome child. "You don't know what you saw." I tried to push myself up, but my body barely shifted. The ropes dug into my wrists, biting into my skin. My pulse pounded in my ears. "I heard them," I gasped. "They were whispering. They were." "You shouldn't have been listening," he interrupted sharply. A tense silence settled between us. The only sound was my ragged breathing. Then, slowly, Mr. Grayson began to dig. My stomach lurched. He wasn't in a hurry. His movements were steady, practiced, like he had done this 100 times before. The sound of the shovel slicing through the dirt sent waves of terror crashing through me. "No," I whispered. "Please, you don't have to do this." Mr. Grayson didn't respond. He just kept digging. I thrashed against my restraints, ignoring the sharp pain shooting up my arms. My fingers clawed at the earth beneath me, desperate for anything to hold on to. "I won't tell anyone," I gasped. "I swear. I'll leave. I'll move out tomorrow. You'll never see me again." Mr. Grayson paused. He leaned on the shovel, studying me for a long moment. Then he sighed. "You think this is about you?" He let out a low chuckle, shaking his head. "This isn't about you, kid." My breathing hitched. Mr. Grayson exhaled through his nose, tapping the shovel against the dirt. He seemed to be debating something in his mind. Then, after a long pause, he finally spoke. "This place is old," he said. "Older than me. Older than you. And some things don't like to stay buried." A chill spread through my bones. "What do you mean?" I whispered. He gestured toward the ground with the tip of his shovel. "I don't bury people out here, Nolan." His voice was flat, emotionless. "I bury them. The ones that don't stay dead. The ones that whisper. The ones that try to come back." I shook my head, my mind rejecting what he was saying. "That doesn't make sense. You think I enjoy this?" He snapped suddenly, his voice laced with frustration. "You think I want to do this?" His jaw clenched. "I've been keeping them quiet for years, keeping this town safe." The words rattled inside my skull. Nothing about this made sense. None of it felt real. I stared at him, searching for any sign of deception. But he wasn't smiling. He wasn't taunting me. He was dead serious. My stomach churned. "The voices," I said, my throat tight. "If they're already gone, why are they still whispering?" Mr. Grayson was silent for a long time. He looked down at the ground, his expression unreadable. Then, finally, he muttered, "Because they don't want to be forgotten." A shiver ran through me. I suddenly became hyper-aware of my surroundings, the weight of the soil beneath me, the cold air pressing against my skin, the oppressive silence of the night. And then, I heard it again, the whispering. Soft at first, just a faint rustling beneath the earth. But then it grew louder, overlapping voices whispering in desperate, urgent tones. "Let us out. Please. We remember." I squeezed my eyes shut, my body trembling. I wasn't imagining this. The voices were real. They were everywhere. And Mr. Grayson, he was just standing there listening. For the first time since waking up in that shallow grave, I wasn't sure if he was the real danger, or if it was something else. The whispering grew louder. It was everywhere, seeping from the ground like a living thing, wrapping around me in cold, unseen tendrils. The voices were no longer just desperate, they were angry. "You let him do this. We remember you. You saw us." I thrashed against the ropes, my breaths coming in quick, shallow gasps. My fingers dug into the loose soil beneath me, clawing at the earth in blind panic. Mr. Grayson didn't move. He stood there, gripping the shovel, his expression grim. The way he looked at me, it wasn't with malice. It wasn't with amusement. It was pity, like he had seen this happen before. The whispers turned into wails. A guttural, ear-piercing sound erupted from the ground beneath me, so loud that I swore the very earth trembled. I squeezed my eyes shut, my entire body shaking. It was like 1,000 voices screaming in unison, a cacophony of rage, sorrow, and hunger. I gasped for air, my chest tightening. The ropes bit into my skin as I struggled. I had to get out. Now. Make it stop. I choked out, my voice raw. Mr. Grayson knelt beside me, his eyes dark and hollow. "I told you," he said quietly. "They don't want to be forgotten." I let out a ragged sob, pulling harder at my restraints. The dirt beneath me shifted, sinking slightly, as if something was moving just below the surface. Then, something grabbed my ankle. A hand. Cold, stiff fingers wrapped around my leg, the grip like iron. My scream caught in my throat. I kicked wildly, but the hand held tight. The pressure increased, pulling me down. The dirt began to shift, swallowing me. No. 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 I fought harder, twisting my body as much as I could despite the restraints. My heart slammed against my ribs. "Help me," I cried, my voice cracking. "I don't want to die." Mr. Grayson didn't move at first. He just watched. Then, with a heavy sigh, he raised the shovel. For a split second, I thought he was going to kill me. Instead, he swung it down hard. The blade of the shovel slammed into the dirt beside my leg, severing the grip of the hand that was dragging me down. The wailing exploded into an unbearable shriek, a sound so high-pitched and unnatural that my vision blurred. The severed hand crumbled into dust, disintegrating into the soil like it had never been there at all. But the whispering didn't stop. The ground beneath me lurched. The dirt moved like it was alive, like something beneath the surface was shifting, writhing. I was still sinking. Mr. Grayson grabbed me by the collar, yanking me out of the grave with a strength that didn't match his thin frame. I landed hard on my side, coughing as I sucked in a desperate breath of fresh air. I turned to look at the grave. The ground was collapsing in on itself. Dark, gnarled shapes twisted beneath the soil, shifting and reaching, as if dozens of unseen hands were still grasping, still clawing their way toward the surface. The whispering turned into a violent, distorted roar before silence. And just like that, the earth was still again. I lay there, panting, my chest heaving. My arms and legs felt like jelly. I barely even flinched when Mr. Grayson knelt beside me and cut the ropes binding my wrists and ankles. My skin was raw where they had dug into me. I turned my head to look at him, still shaking. What the hell was that? He didn't answer right away. He just stared at the freshly closed grave, his expression unreadable. After a long pause, he muttered, "It's not over yet." A fresh wave of fear surged through me. "What do you mean?" I rasped. Mr. Grayson stood up, dusting the dirt off his pants. He looked down at me with tired eyes. "You heard them," he said simply. "You let them see you." I swallowed hard. "The ones who remember," he continued, "are the ones they don't let go." I forced myself to sit up, ignoring the sharp pain in my ribs. "That doesn't make any sense," I said, though my voice was weak. They were already dead." Mr. Grayson's jaw tightened. "You don't get it, kid. Some people die and move on. Others don't." I shook my head. "That still doesn't explain why they tried to drag me under." He exhaled sharply, rubbing a hand over his face. "Because now they know you're here." The words sent a chill through me. I tried to process everything, the hands, the voices, the way the earth had swallowed itself. It didn't feel real. None of it felt real. I had been 1 second away from disappearing. Just like the people the old woman in the laundromat had warned me about. I shuddered. "You've been doing this for a long time," I said quietly. Mr. Grayson didn't confirm or deny it. He just stared at the ground, gripping the shovel tightly. "How many?" I whispered. His expression darkened. "Too many." A heavy silence stretched between us. I didn't know what to say. My mind was racing, trying to make sense of everything. If what he was saying was true, if these things, these whispers, didn't move on, then what was stopping them from coming for me again? "What do I do?" I asked finally, my voice barely above a whisper. Mr. Grayson looked at me, his face grim. "You have 2 choices," he said. "You leave town and never look back." I waited for the second option, but he didn't say anything else. My stomach twisted. "That's it." He nodded. "That's it." I clenched my jaw. "And if I don't leave?" His eyes flickered toward the grave. "Then you'll wish you had." A sharp gust of wind rushed through the trees, rustling the leaves. The night suddenly felt much colder. I looked back at the house, the small, run-down building I had called home for the last few months. It had seemed like such a perfect place at first. Quiet, isolated, a fresh start. But now it felt like a graveyard. I pushed myself to my feet, my legs still shaky. Mr. Grayson watched me, waiting. I took a deep breath. I had a decision to make, and I didn't have much time. I stood there, my body aching, my mind reeling. The whispering had stopped, but the weight of what I had just experienced clung to me like a second skin. I wasn't sure if my heart was still racing from fear, or if I was just now starting to process the fact that I had nearly been dragged into the earth by something that shouldn't exist. Mr. Grayson stood silently a few feet away, his shovel resting in his grip like an extension of himself. The way he looked at me, expectant, almost impatient, made it clear that he was waiting for me to make a decision. "Leave town," he had said, "and never look back." I glanced toward my house. It was just a small, one-story rental on the edge of town. I had come here for peace, for a fresh start away from the mess I had left behind in my old life. And for the first time, I realized how little it meant. I could pack up and leave tonight, drive as far as my gas tank would take me, pretend none of this ever happened. But deep down, I knew the truth. I could run, but they would still remember me. I swallowed hard, my throat dry. What if leaving isn't enough? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Mr. Grayson exhaled sharply through his nose. "Then you'd better hope they don't follow you." That wasn't an answer. Not really. Something about the way he said it, the way his voice wavered just slightly at the end, it made me wonder if he had tried running before. If maybe this wasn't his first town. I took a slow, shaky breath. "What are they?" I finally asked. Mr. Grayson didn't answer right away. Instead, he turned and walked toward the grave. The dirt had settled again, but the memory of those hands reaching up from the soil burned in my mind. He crouched down, pressing his palm against the ground. I wasn't sure what he was listening for, but after a long moment he spoke. "They weren't always like this," he said quietly. A shiver ran down my spine. "What do you mean?" He let out a tired sigh. "People die, Nolan. Some pass on, some don't. And then, there are the ones that stay behind because they have no choice." A lump formed in my throat. "No choice." He nodded. "Something holds them here. Something keeps them from moving on." I shifted uncomfortably, my mind immediately going to the graves, the dozens of fresh mounds of dirt I had seen over the past few weeks. "How do you know so much about this?" I asked hesitantly. Mr. Grayson's fingers curled into the dirt. He was silent for so long that I wasn't sure he was going to answer. But then, in a low voice, he muttered, "Because I buried the first one." My stomach turned. I didn't want to ask. I really didn't. But I had to. "Who?" He finally looked at me, his face unreadable. And then, after another long silence, he said, "My wife." I felt my breath hitch. My mouth opened, but no words came out. Mr. Grayson stood up slowly, brushing the dirt off his hands. "She died 20 years ago," he said. "At least, she was supposed to." The way he said it sent a chill through me. I stared at him, waiting for him to continue. "When she passed, I did what any husband would do," he continued. "I grieved. I arranged the funeral. I laid her to rest." He swallowed. "But the night after we buried her, I heard her voice. I couldn't move. I thought I was imagining it," he said. "But then I heard it again, and again, until I couldn't ignore it anymore. A cold dread seeped into my bones. So I dug her up," he said simply. I clenched my fists. And his jaw tightened. She was still there. I stared at him. Still there. His eyes darkened. She wasn't alive, but she wasn't gone either. A sickening feeling twisted in my gut. "What did you do?" His fingers curled tighter around the shovel. "I put her back," he said. "And then I buried her again." My stomach churned. "And that stopped it?" For the first time, Mr. Grayson looked uncertain. For a while, I swallowed the bile rising in my throat. I wanted to believe he was lying, that this was some sick joke, that he was just some crazy old man trying to scare me. But I had seen the hands. I had heard the voices. And deep down, I knew he wasn't lying. And now, I forced myself to ask. Mr. Grayson looked at the grave. His grip on the shovel tightened. "They don't want to stay buried anymore," he said quietly. A thick silence settled between us. I felt a lump in my throat. "So, what happens next?" Mr. Grayson exhaled sharply, rubbing a hand over his face. "If you stay," he said, "you have to help me." I frowned. "Help you?" He nodded. "They don't just go away, Nolan. They don't stop. Someone has to keep them down. Someone has to make sure they don't get out." A cold shudder ran through me. "You mean you want me to help bury them?" He didn't respond right away. Then, in a low voice, he muttered, "If we don't, no one else will." I felt sick. I had come here for a new life, a fresh start, not to play gravekeeper for the dead. I wanted to tell him no. I wanted to tell him I would leave. But something deep inside me whispered that it wouldn't matter. I had heard them. I had seen them. And now they knew my name. I stared at the ground, my heart hammering in my chest. My body ached, my mind raced. I had a choice. I could leave, or I could stay. I just wasn't sure which option was worse. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on the edge of my bed, gripping my phone so tightly my knuckles turned white. The idea of running still lingered in my mind, but every time I considered it, I remembered the whispers. They don't want to be forgotten. What if I packed up and left, only to hear them in my new home? What if I woke up to those same whispers seeping through my walls, crawling under my skin? No matter how much I tried to reason with myself, I knew the truth. I was marked. I had heard them, and they had heard me. The shadows in my room seemed darker that night, stretching unnaturally long across the walls. Every creak of the house made my pulse spike. The silence felt too heavy, like the air itself was pressing down on me. I kept replaying Mr. Grayson's words over and over in my head. They don't just go away. Someone has to keep them down. I glanced out my window. His house sat in the distance, barely visible through the trees. I could still see the faint glow of a light from his porch. He was awake, probably standing there with his shovel, keeping watch. I shivered. What kind of life was that? I lay back on my bed, staring at the ceiling. My whole body ached, exhaustion pulling at my limbs, but sleep wouldn't come. My mind was too loud, too filled with thoughts of what was waiting beneath the dirt. At some point, I must have dozed off, because I woke up to the sound of something tapping against my window. My breath caught in my throat. I didn't move at first. I just lay there listening. Tap, tap, tap. Slow, rhythmic. I turned my head toward the window, pulse hammering. My blinds were drawn, but I could see the faint outline of something pressed against the glass. A shape. A hand. I froze. I wanted to believe it was my imagination, that I was still dreaming. But then the whispering started. Low. Muffled. From the other side of the glass. My heart nearly stopped. I forced myself to sit up, my body trembling. My breath came in shallow, uneven gasps. I stared at the window, unable to look away. The hand dragged slowly down the glass, leaving behind a streak of condensation. And then, in a voice so quiet it barely reached my ears, I heard it. Nolan. A whisper. A plea. I scrambled backward, nearly falling off the bed. My pulse roared in my ears. No, this wasn't happening. I squeezed my eyes shut. Maybe if I didn't look, it would go away. Maybe. A sudden, violent knock shattered the silence. This time, it wasn't coming from the window. It was coming from the front door. I let out a shaky breath, forcing myself to move. My legs felt like lead as I stumbled toward the door. Knock, knock, knock. I hesitated, my hand hovering over the doorknob. Every instinct in my body screamed at me not to open it. But then, "Nolan," a voice called. A familiar voice. "Mr. Grayson." I exhaled sharply, my whole body sagging with relief. I unlocked the door and yanked it open. Mr. Grayson stood on my porch, his face tense. He looked past me, eyes scanning the room. "Did you hear them?" I swallowed hard. "Yeah," I whispered. They were at my window." His expression darkened. He stepped inside without waiting for permission, shutting the door behind him. "It's worse than I thought," he muttered. I ran a hand through my hair, still trying to calm my racing heart. "What the hell does that mean?" He didn't answer right away. He just walked to the window and lifted the blinds. The handprint was still there. A single, smeared outline pressed against the glass from the outside. Mr. Grayson let out a heavy breath. "They're getting bolder," he murmured. I stared at the handprint, while rising in my throat. "What do we do?" He turned to face me. "We go back." I felt my stomach drop. "Back. To the graves." His voice was grim. "There's something new out there, and we need to find out what it wants." I didn't move. I didn't want to go back. But deep down, I knew I had no choice. Because if I didn't face this now, it would come for me again. Underscore 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 underscore. We walked through the woods in silence, the night pressing in around us. The moon cast eerie shadows along the dirt path, making every tree look like a twisted, reaching hand. Mr. Grayson walked ahead, his shovel resting against his shoulder. He didn't seem afraid, just tired. I wasn't sure how many times he had done this before. I wasn't sure I wanted to know. We reached the clearing where the graves were. The dirt was still freshly turned from where I had been nearly pulled under. The air was thick, suffocating. And then I heard it. A faint scratching sound, like nails dragging through the dirt. I stopped, my breath catching. "Did you hear that?" I whispered. Mr. Grayson didn't respond. He was already moving, stepping toward one of the graves. I followed slowly, my heart pounding. The scratching grew louder, and then a voice. "Help me." I froze. The whisper came from beneath the ground. My blood ran cold. I looked at Mr. Grayson, but he didn't seem surprised. He just sighed. "Don't listen to it," he muttered. "It's not real." But it sounded real. It sounded human. I took a step closer to the grave. The dirt shifted slightly. My whole body tensed. And then a hand broke through the surface. Pale, thin, fingers twitching, reaching, grasping. I stumbled backward, my pulse roaring in my ears. "What the hell?" "They're waking up," Mr. Grayson said grimly. The whispering grew louder, more frantic, more desperate. Hands. More hands began to push through the soil, fingers clawing at the dirt, grasping at the air. I wanted to run, but my feet wouldn't move, because now, through the chorus of whispers, I heard something else. A single voice. Soft. Familiar. "Nolan, please." I turned sharply toward the sound, and that's when I saw it. A hand emerging from the dirt directly in front of me, and wrapped around its wrist was a bracelet I recognized, because it belonged to someone I once knew, someone who had been missing for years, my childhood best friend, Eric. For a moment, I forgot how to breathe. I knew that bracelet. The frayed black cord, the small silver plate engraved with his initials, EC. Eric Carter, my best friend, the boy who had gone missing 10 years ago. My legs nearly gave out beneath me. The whispers around me swirled into a cacophony, but I could only hear his voice. Nolan, help me. I took an unsteady step forward, my fingers trembling as I reached out. This couldn't be real. It had to be some kind of mistake, some cruel, twisted illusion. But when I touched the bracelet, the skin beneath it was warm. A pulse, a heartbeat. I recoiled, horror twisting in my gut. He was alive, buried under the dirt, but still alive. I turned to Mr. Grayson, my voice shaking. He's not. But Mr. Grayson didn't look surprised. His face was grim, his grip tightening on the shovel. I told you not to listen to them, he said quietly. I felt sick. You knew, I choked out. You knew someone was down there. His expression darkened. That's not Eric. My stomach twisted. What the hell are you talking about? I turned back to the hand in the dirt. It looked real. Felt real. He's still breathing. He's not Eric. The words rang in my head, but I couldn't accept them. The whispers around us rose to a fever pitch. The ground beneath me shifted. I could feel movement, something stirring. And then, before I could react, the hand grabbed my wrist. I screamed. It wasn't a desperate grip, not like someone begging to be saved. It was strong, unnaturally strong. Wrong. The fingers dug into my skin, ice cold despite the warmth I had felt before. I tried to yank away, but the grip tightened, pulling me downward. Nolan. Mr. Grayson's voice cut through the noise. Let go. I couldn't. The more I struggled, the stronger it got. And then, for the first time, I looked at the hand properly. And I saw it. The skin too smooth, like it had been stitched together. The fingers were too long, bending at unnatural angles. And beneath the bracelet, there was no scar. Eric had a scar. A deep, jagged mark across his wrist from when we were kids, from the time he had slipped on broken glass at the lake. But this thing didn't have it. I froze. That was the moment I understood. This wasn't Eric. It had never been Eric. Whatever was buried down there, it was pretending to be him, pretending to be someone I loved. A sharp, cold terror ripped through me. I turned back to Mr. Grayson, panic in my eyes. What do I do? He didn't hesitate. He raised his shovel and swung it down. I barely had time to react before the blade slammed into the dirt just inches from my hand. The thing shrieks. Not just a scream, 100 screams layered on top of each other. The fingers around my wrist loosen. I rip my arm away, stumbling back, gasping for breath. The whispers turn into screeches. The graves, all of them, start to shake. They're waking up, Mr. Grayson mutters. Damn it, help me. I don't have time to process. Don't have time to think. The ground is breaking apart. More hands start emerging, clawing at the surface, pulling themselves up. Some look human. Some don't. Some are missing pieces. A leg. A half-formed face. A mouth that opens too wide. I grab a shovel and start digging. Not to uncover them. To bury them back. Dirt flies everywhere as I work beside Mr. Grayson, shoveling soil over the writhing limbs, over the desperate fingers. They're fighting back. They're trying to crawl out. One of them grabs my ankle. I kick it away. I don't stop. I can't stop. The screeches grow louder, more frantic. The ground bucks beneath me like something massive is shifting underneath. And then, silence. The ground goes still. I don't move. I don't breathe. I wait. The graves are quiet. Mr. Grayson exhales heavily, leaning on his shovel. His face is slick with sweat, his shoulders rising and falling with exhaustion. For a long time, neither of us speaks. Then he mutters, "It's done." I don't feel relief. I feel empty. I look at my hands. They're shaking. My nails are caked with dirt, my skin raw. And then, I hear it. A whisper. So soft, I almost think I imagined it. But it's right next to my ear. Not yet. A cold shiver runs down my spine. I look at Mr. Grayson. He's already walking away. And deep in my gut, I know this isn't over. I didn't sleep for the next 2 nights. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard it. That voice. Those whispers. That last chilling message. Not yet. It haunted me. Crawled under my skin. I could still feel the ghost of that hand around my wrist, the unnatural grip, the cold that seeped into my bones. But the graves were silent now. At least, that's what I told myself. Mr. Grayson had gone back to his house after we finished. He barely spoke a word to me, just muttered that he'd be watching before disappearing into the dark. I wanted to believe it was over. I needed to believe it. But deep down, I knew the truth. It wasn't over. Not for me. Not after I had heard them. Not after they had spoken my name. On the 3rd night, something changed. I had just started to doze off when I felt it. A shift in the air. Like the room had grown smaller. Heavier. Then, a whisper. So close to my ear, I could feel the breath against my skin. "Nolan, wake up." My eyes snapped open. I wasn't alone. I couldn't see them, but I could feel them. The weight in the room. The pressure against my chest. Something was here. Watching. Waiting. I sat up slowly, my heart hammering. My bedroom door was still closed. The windows locked. But I knew locks wouldn't stop them. I reached for my phone with a shaking hand. 3:12 a.m. I hesitated. Then, before I could stop myself, I texted Mr. Grayson. "Nolan, they're here." Seconds passed. Then, "Grayson, I know. Don't move." A chill ran down my spine. He knew. How? I barely had time to process it before my phone vibrated again. "Grayson, they never stopped watching you. They've been waiting." I swallowed hard. My mouth was dry, my hands clammy. I wanted to ask, waiting for what? But I already knew. For me. To make a mistake. To listen. To answer. The whispering started again, louder this time. "Nolan, come outside." I squeezed my eyes shut. "Don't listen. Don't answer." A soft tap on my window. Not like before. This time, it was deliberate. Rhythmic. Like knocking. Like someone wanted to be let in. I clenched my jaw, forcing myself to stay still. To pretend I didn't hear it. But then, something clicked. The door. My bedroom door. It was unlocking. A slow, deliberate sound. Click. 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 My breath hitched. I had locked it. I knew I had. But now, the knob turned, and the door opened. A shadow stretched across my floor. Tall. Thin. Wrong. I didn't move. Didn't breathe. The whispers grew louder. And then, a voice I hadn't heard in years. "Nolan, it's me." I knew that voice. I had missed that voice. Eric. I turned my head slowly. And there he was, standing in the doorway. His eyes wide, pleading. His face exactly the same as I remembered, like he hadn't aged a day. Like time had frozen for him. Like he had been waiting. "Help me," he whispered. My throat closed. It looked like him. It sounded like him. But I knew. Eric was dead. Had to be. And yet, he took a step forward, his expression desperate. "You saw me, Nolan. You found me. I don't know how long I've been down there. Please, you have to help me. Don't let him bury me again. Don't let him bury me again." I felt something twist in my chest. Was it possible? Had Mr. Grayson been lying to me? Had he buried Eric alive all those years ago? I shook my head, stepping back. No, I whispered. You're not real. Pain flickered across his face. His lips trembled. It's me, he pleaded. I swear it's me. I hesitated, and that was my mistake, because in that moment of doubt, he smiled, and his mouth stretched too wide, too wrong, his teeth too sharp, his eyes too empty. I stumbled backward. It wasn't Eric. It had never been Eric. The whispers turned to screams. The thing in the doorway lunged. I ran. I didn't think, I just ran. Shoving past it, sprinting down the hall, throwing myself through the front door and into the freezing night. I didn't stop. Not until I reached Mr. Grayson's house. I banged on his door, my hands shaking, my chest heaving. It swung open almost instantly. He pulled me inside without a word, locked the door, pulled the blinds, and then slowly he turned to face me. You saw him, didn't you? He said. I swallowed hard. My whole body trembled. I nodded. Mr. Grayson let out a long breath. Then it's too late, he muttered. A chill crawled up my spine. I didn't want to ask, didn't want to hear the answer, but I forced the words out anyway. Too late for what? He met my eyes. For the first time, I saw real fear in them. They won't let you go now, he said. Not until you take my place. The room spun. My stomach twisted. What? I breathed. He exhaled. There always has to be someone to keep them buried. Someone to make sure they don't get out. I felt like I was going to be sick. My mind raced. You tricked me. His expression was grim. I didn't trick you, Nolan. I just didn't tell you the truth. My hands clenched into fists. No, I whispered. No, I won't do it. Mr. Grayson sighed. You don't have a choice. A sound made me freeze. A whisper. Outside the window. Soft. Familiar. Nolan. I turned slowly. And through the glass, I saw them. Dozens of them. Standing in the dark. Waiting. Smiling. The whispering grew louder. And deep down I knew. Mr. Grayson was right. I wasn't leaving. Not anymore. And so, the night grows deeper, and the whispers fade into silence. But does the story truly end? Or are they still waiting? Watching? Calling your name in the quiet hours before dawn? Perhaps, tonight, as you close your eyes, you'll hear them too. A soft tapping at your window. A voice, familiar yet wrong, whispering just beyond the edge of sleep. If you do whatever you do, don't answer. Now take a deep breath, let the tension fade from your body, and drift into the calm embrace of the night. Before you go, tell me, what would you do if you were in Nolan's place? Would you dig deeper, or would you run? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who loves a good midnight mystery. Sleep well, and be careful what you listen to in the dark.